Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. Be sure to visit us at wargamesdelivered.com to get the paints, miniatures, and supplies used in this video, and also to refer a friend. You guys will both get a $15 discount, and with that, let's get into the video.
Earlier this week, I was about to finish up my Sorrows from Malifaux, and I figured this would be a good example of painting within a theme and giving each model within the unit some individuality. Starting out, I wanted to use a few different colors for the sort of magical area on these minis, but since they're in the same unit, I also wanted to make them resemble each other without changing the color scheme too much between the models. This is a practice that I like to use on a lot of different model ranges if they lend themselves to slight color variations. Usually on my more rigid armies like Necrons, I like to keep the paint scheme pretty concise, but armies like Chaos or some of the Game of Thrones armies tend to give you a bit more freedom in your color variation. With the first model here, I'm using Ghillie Dew from the new Speedpaint line, and I'm just aiming to paint up to the halfway point with the model. If you saw the first video on these minis a few months ago, we used the same technique except using the Speedpaint 1.0s instead. Next up, I'm very quickly switching to Gravelord Grey from the original Speedpaint line to cover the torso, the back, and the head. And I'm not blending quite yet at this stage. I'm really just trying to paint those spots and prep for the blending step. If you're interested in picking up any of the Speedpaint classics before they are out of stock, we have a huge clearance on those over at wargamesdelivered.com, where if you use the code CLASSIC, all capitals, you'll get 5 free Speedpaints with any purchase of 10. Check out the link below in the description to pick them up, and be sure to use code CLASSIC, all capitals, at checkout. Now working on the arms again with Ghillie Dew, and in this stage I'm starting to blend the green into the gray first on his arms and just move the paint until you have a decent gradient built up before the paint dries. Moving on to the last model in this unit, we'll change up the green to Ghoul Green, and I'm basically just going to repeat the entire process that we just did in the first mini. You can really do this with any color, but I'm trying to maintain a necrotic magical green color across all of my Neverborn Pandora faction minis, but changing one color slightly can really add a bit of depth to your Malifaux crew. For my brush, I'm using a standard base coating brush from the Army Painter, and this is a great size for blending and applying speed paints quickly. You could go a bit larger on the brush, but I typically opt for a smaller brush for more control. And again, repeating the steps from earlier, I switched back to Gravelord Grey to fill in his torso and his head. Same steps as before. You'll also notice I like to start the blending process a little bit later on with the arms. This is because I use the gray on the arms last to make blending on the arms really easy. For anyone interested in trying out some of the other Army Painter lines, we have a promotion for all of the Army Painter paint lines over on our website at wargamesdelivered.com, where if you buy 6, you'll get 3 free paints of your choice with your order. There's a link for this promotion in the description below. Once you start to build up some of the blending on the arms, again, lastly, we'll blend the midsection, because after you finish with the arms, your brush should have a bit of both paints on it, so as long as you pull from the green into the gray, you'll create a decent gradient. With those steps done, our evil ghostly guys are nearly finished, and there's just a few simple steps on the faces that I will follow up with before basing these guys. Next up, we're going to use Aged Hide to add a pinkish orange layer to the tongues here. I'm actually going to use 2 layers of the speed paint, so just make sure that the speed paint is absolutely dry before you go in with that second layer. Now I switched to the acrylic line for his eyes, and I'll show you how to create a subtle glow effect on the eyes here. Starting out with matte black, use a more precise brush and block in the entire eye socket. Be very careful around the Gravelord Grey from the previous step, because it can be really hard to fix the speed paints if you make any mistakes. Next up, I'm adding some pupils using matte white, and for this step I'm using the precise detail brush again. This time I form my brush a little bit extra to really get a fine point. I'm just trying to paint a small dot in the center of each eye socket. This is kind of the opposite of what you would do for a normal eye, and I actually find painting undead or demonic eyes like this much simpler than realistic eyes. And lastly, use Ghillie Dew again to paint a thin layer over each of the eyes, and you'll have a subtle green glowing effect over all of your minis. Using slight variations in a overall theme can really help make painting a unit fun and break up the monotony a bit that we sometimes face when painting larger armies or similar paint schemes for a long time.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more painting tutorials, and also be sure to check out the top link for the giveaway attached to this video. Thanks again, guys, and happy wargaming!